In 1978, the Chinese people lived in almost total isolation from the outside world. For nearly 3 decades under Mao, international relations, especially with America, had been cold and often hostile. Now, China and the U.S. were eager to move forward. At the end of 1978, Americans partied with their Chinese colleagues in a relaxed atmosphere not seen for decades. Under Deng Xiaoping, negotiations for full diplomatic relations were swift. On January 1, 1979, Ambassador Leonard Woodcock welcomed Deng to the American embassy to celebrate the new relationship.
This had been a long desire on the part of the Chinese to affect normal relations with the United States, so that Deng Xiaoping had made this a major item of his program. He was extremely happy. All the Chinese were.
At the end of January, Deng Xiaoping made an official visit to America.
我们将同美国政府领导人和国家朋友共同探讨发展两国在政治、经济、科技、文化各个领域的交流和合作问题。
Deng was the first Chinese leader ever to visit the U.S.
One of the places he wanted to go was the Space Center in Houston.
Welcome to the training facilities of the astronauts.
Because he has a very curious mind, and he was most anxious to see all he could see. And then they asked him if he'd like to get in the simulator where he'd manipulate the controls. It was though he in fact was in a spaceship bringing it in to a landing.
200 feet. 100 feet.
And the gear are now coming down.
And he was so fascinated by that. They had trouble getting him out, and he just wouldn't move because he was so fascinated with it.
40 feet. 20 feet, Fred.
Deng Xiaoping knew how to live. Deng loved these activities and was happy to go to them. He had a sense of humor. For example, when we went to the rodeo in Texas, everyone was given a hat. Deng got a kick out of wearing it.
Before he made the trip, the Chinese apparently had an inquiry from our State Department, what kind of food should he be served? And the answer that they got was a cautious diplomatic bland food. So the State Department made a decision, there's no blander food than veal. So at the state dinner, he got veal. At every dinner he went to, he got veal. When we got to Atlanta, and Governor Busby, then the governor of Georgia, said to him, "Is there anything about the United States that particularly impresses you, Mr. Vice Premier?" He growled, "Yes, veal at every meal."
Throughout his trip, Deng discussed his ambitious plans to modernize China and make it part of the world economy. One senior American official said everyone who met Deng was amazed at the boldness and sweep of his vision. But Deng's vision did not include political tolerance. By the time he returned to China in February, the Democracy Wall movement had spread to other cities. Posters at the wall began to make serious criticisms of the Communist Party. When activist Wei Jingsheng warned that Deng was becoming a dictator, Deng ordered Wei arrested. In a show trial lasting just one day, Wei was accused of counter-revolution. His outspokenness earned him Deng's personal enmity and a harsh sentence of 15 years in prison. Liu Qing was arrested for handing out copies of the transcript of Wei's trial.
They forced us to sit up straight on small stools. Only after hours in the same position were we allowed to stand up and quickly go to the bathroom. For more than 4 years, I was a vegetable. Except for breathing, they restricted me from moving any part of my body. So I decided to go on a hunger strike. On the 6th day, they force-fed me. They strapped me to a chair while more than 10 people held me down. They squeezed my throat, so I had to open my mouth to breathe. Then they twisted an iron thing into my mouth. It split the corners of my mouth open. Then they used pincers to pull my tongue forward and forced a tube down my throat. They stuffed liquid food into the tube. Food, water, and blood mixed together and went into my stomach. After I had been through all that, I understood the Communist Party better. I wanted to die before, but after this I felt I must survive to let the world know what had happened.
The posters were torn down and their writers intimidated. The journals which had briefly flourished were shut down. One young poet dared to pin a final tribute on the wall. "My friend, parting time is pending. Farewell, Democracy Wall. What can I say to you? Should I speak of spring's frigidity? Should I say you are like the withered winter sweet? No. I should instead talk of happiness, tomorrow's happiness, of pure orchid skies, of golden flowers, of a child's bright eyes. We ought to part with dignity. Don't you agree?" For the vast majority of Chinese, the aspirations of the Democracy Wall activists seemed remote. Most people lived in the countryside and were concerned with more basic needs.
Life was extremely difficult. We had nothing but coarse grain to fill our stomachs, and we barely survived. With a family of 10, you had to work hard. We only had a few cents to live on. I mean, that was really hard.
We had to go to work very early in the morning. We had to work for 2 hours on an empty stomach. We ate less than half a pound of rice a day. The men hoed the land while women pulled up the seedlings for transplanting. Everybody had to work. You wouldn't get anything to eat if you didn't. Life was so miserable.
Peasants led regimented lives in large communes. There was little incentive to work harder. Even in a crisis, most of their harvest had to be given to the government. In 1978, there was a devastating drought in Anhui province in central China. Facing starvation, peasants in one village took a bold step. They stopped communal farming and divided the land among the families. Each household worked with new initiative. For after giving their grain quota to the state, they would keep the surplus crop. The farmers knew that people had done this in the past and gone to jail for it. They promised to look after the families of anyone who got into trouble. And they signed an agreement with their fingertips dipped in blood. The risk was worth taking because that year they ate. Local officials sent a representative to Beijing to ask for permission to continue.
In July 1979, an old man, Guo Chunyi, came to Beijing. First he went to the People's Daily, but nobody dared see him. Then he went to the China News Agency, but still no one dared see him. I heard about him and invited him to my group. When he spoke, he stressed that he was pleading for the peasants. I was very moved.
The household responsibility system caused a great debate inside the party. Some senior leaders thought it would upset the whole communist system, but others firmly supported it. They saw it as the only solution to the poverty in China's countryside.
In a monumental decision, Deng's government decided to allow the household responsibility system. Soon after, they disbanded the communes, the main means of communist organization and control in the countryside. In villages around the country, like Shenjiali, many were confused by this dramatic change.
Was this socialism? Was our country still socialist? Was it capitalism? That's what I wondered.
What I was afraid of was there were not enough laborers in my family. My 3 children didn't know how to farm. I was the only one who worked.
Anyway, it was useless to object. It was the government's policy. It was policy. If folks were against it, it was no use, right? Policy is policy.
Under the new system, village after village produced bumper harvests. For centuries, the Chinese people had lived on the edge, facing one famine after another. Now, the average family had enough to eat.
At that time, there was a popular saying among the peasants. Mao Zedong gave us liberation, and Deng Xiaoping has given us food.